वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 13, Text 54. So please repeat after me. Satya, Jnana, Ananta, Ananda, Matra, Ekarasa, Murtayah, Asprishtabhuri Mahatmyah, Api Hi Upanishadrisham Satyajnanantananda Ananda Matraika Rasamurtayah Asprishtabhuri Mahatmya Abhyupanishadrisham Satyajnanantananda Matraika Rasamurtayah Asprishtabhuri Mahatmya Apihyupanishadrisham Satyajnanantananda Matraika Rasamurtayah Asprishtabhuri Mahatmya Apihyupanishadrisham. Satyajnanananda Asprishtabhuri Mahatmya Apihyupanishadrisham. Satyajnanananda Matraika Rasamurtayah Asprishtabhuri Mahatmya Apihyupanishadrisham. Satyajnanananda Matraika Rasamurtayah Asprishtabhuri Mahatmya. Mataji. Satyajnanananda Matraika Rasamurtayah Asprishtabhuri Mahatmya Apihyupanishadrisham. Satya, eternal. Jnana, having full knowledge. Ananta, unlimited. Ananda, fully blissful. Matra, only. Ekarasa, always existing. Murtayaha, forms. Asprishtabhuri Mahatmyaha, whose great glory is not touched. Api, even. He, because. Upanishadrisham, by those jnanis who are engaged in studying the Upanishads. Translation purport. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Founder Acharya of ISKCON. Translation. The Vishnu Murtis all had eternal unlimited forms, full of knowledge and bliss, and existing beyond the influence of time. Their great glory was not even to be touched by the Jnanis engaged in studying the Upanishads. Purport. Mere Shastra Jnana or knowledge in the Vedas does not help anyone understand the personality of Godhead. Only one who is favored or shown mercy by the Lord can understand him. This is also explained in the Upanishads. Mundakopanishad 3.2.3. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo na medasana bahuna shrutena yam evaisha vrinute tena labhyas tasyaisha atma vivrinute tanum swam. The Supreme Lord is not obtained by expert explanations, by vast intelligence, or even by much hearing. He is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. One description given of Brahman is Satyam Brahma, Ananda Rupam. Brahman is the absolute truth and complete Ananda or bliss. The forms of Vishnu, the Supreme Brahman, were one, but they were manifested differently. The followers of the Upanishads, however, cannot understand the varieties manifested by Brahman. This proves that Brahman and Paramatma can actually be understood only through devotion, as confirmed by the Lord himself in Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhaktyaham Ekaya Grahyah. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 14, Text 21. To establish that Brahman indeed has transcendental form, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives various quotations from the Shastras. In the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3.8, the Supreme is described as Aditya Varnam Tamasaf Parastat. He whose self-manifested form is luminous like the sun and transcendental to the darkness of ignorance. And in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4.4.19, he is described as Ananda Matram Ajaram Puranam Ekam Santam Bahuda Drishyamanam. The Supreme is blissful with no tinge of unhappiness. Although he is the oldest, he never ages, and although one, he is experienced in different forms. Sarve nityah shashvatascha dehas tasya paratmanah. All the forms of that Supreme Person are eternal. Mahavaraha Purana. The Supreme Person has a form with hands and legs and other personal features, but his hands and legs are not material. Bhaktas know that the form of Krishna or Brahman is not at all material. Rather, Brahman has a transcendental form, and when one is absorbed in it, being fully developed in bhakti, one can understand him. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. The Mayavadis, however, cannot understand this transcendental form, for they think that it is material. Transcendental forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his person are so great that the impersonal followers of the Upanishads cannot reach the platform of knowledge to understand them. Particularly, the transcendental forms of the Lord are beyond the reach of the impersonalists, who can only understand through the studies of the Upanishads that the absolute truth is not matter and that the absolute truth is not materially restricted by limited potency. Yet, although Krishna cannot be seen through the Upanishads, in some places it is said that Krishna can in fact be known in this way. Upanishadam Purusham. He is known by the Upanishads. This means that when one is purified by Vedic knowledge, one is then allowed to enter into devotional understanding. Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 54. Tat Shraddhadhana Muneyo Jnana Vairagi Yuktaya Pashyantyatmani Chatmanam Bhaktya Shruta Grihitaya. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 12. The word Shrutagrihitaya refers to Vedanta knowledge, not sentimentality. Shrutagrihita is sound knowledge. Lord Vishnu, Brahma thus realized, is the reservoir of all truth, knowledge and bliss. He is the combination of these three transcendental features, and he is the object of worship for the followers of the Upanishads. Brahma realized that all the different forms of cows, boys and calves transformed into Vishnu forms were not transformed by mysticism of the type that a yogi or demigod can display by specific powers invested in him. The cows, calves, and boys transformed into Vishnu Murtis or Vishnu forms were not displays of Vishnu Maya or Vishnu energy, but were Vishnu himself. The respective qualifications of Vishnu and Vishnu Maya are just like those of fire and heat. In heat, there is the qualification of fire, namely warmth, and yet heat is not fire. The manifestation of the Vishnu forms of the boys, cows, and calves was not like the heat, but rather like the fire. They were all actually Vishnu. Factually, the qualification of Vishnu is full truth, full knowledge, and full bliss. Another example may be given with material objects which may be reflected in many forms. For example, the sun is reflected in many water pots, but the reflections of the sun in many pots are not actually the sun. There is no actual heat and light from the sun in the pot, although it appears as the sun. But each and every one of the forms Krishna assumed was fully Vishnu. We should discuss Srimad Bhagavatam daily as much as possible, and then everything will be clarified. For Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedic literature. Nigama Kalpataror Galitam Phalam, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.13. It was written by Vyasdev Mahamuni Krite when he was self-realized. Thus, the more we read Srimad Bhagavatam, the more its knowledge becomes clear. Each and every verse is transcendental. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namo Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namo Nirvishesha Srimad Bhagavatam 10.13.54. So I'll read the translation again. The Vishnu Murtis all had eternal, unlimited forms, full of knowledge and bliss and existing beyond the influence of time. Their great glory was not even to be touched by the Gyanis engaged in studying the Upanishads. Okay, so we are continuing our discussion of this Brahma Vimohan Leela. It comes in Canto 10, Chapter 13 of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, this is a continuation of the inner mood and what Lord Brahma saw, which is being explained by Shukdev Goswami. Okay, so Shukdev Goswami is basically conveying the inner thoughts of Brahma, which happened in the previous few verses, and now he's speaking about what Lord Brahma actually saw. So Brahma, before the cowherd boys, Krishna in the form of cowherd boys, calves, and the cows, he revealed himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma thought that he knew the Lord, and he thought that he knew Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he was bewildered because he could not understand how Lord Vishnu has come in the form of Krishna and how he's performing all these pastimes. And this verse is actually very significant, and the purport is also amazing that Prabhupada has given. There is this word, Upanishad Drisham. So we will discuss this in detail later, but the specific word which Shukdev Goswami uses here is Upanishad Drisham. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned that the personified Vedas, which means with all their Shakha, Upanishads, Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranikas, everything, personified form actually always associate with Lord Brahma, or rather Lord Brahma always associates with them because they are present in personified form in Satyaloka. So Satyaloka is the abode of Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma always has the association of the Vedas personified. And we will see in several instances in Srimad Bhagavatam itself and in other Itihasas and Puranas that when Brahma goes to different places due to the request of the demigods or out of his own volition, the personified Vedas also travel with him. So couple of these instances is when in Canto 5, when Maharaj Priyavrata was engaged in austerities, but then the universe, or rather all the Digpalas, all the administrators of the universe wanted him to get married, create progeny and rule the world, the entire Bhumandala. So at that time, Lord Brahma comes, Lord Shiva comes, Narad Muni comes, everybody comes and they goad him. They ask Maharaj Priyavrata to get married. So that time, Lord Brahma, he accompanies or he is accompanied by the personified Vedas and he gives arguments from the Vedic literatures. Now, similarly, at the start of Ramayana also, during when Valmiki uttered the curse, looking at the two Kronchas who have been killed by the hunter, he uttered a verse which came out as a curse, and then he was contemplating on it. And Lord Brahma comes along with the personified Vedas, and he tells them that now this is your start of writing your Ramayana. This is how it is supposed to happen. Now we also understand that time is cyclic. So these instances which happen in every day of Brahma, Brahma is actually already aware of it because they are already there in the form of the Vedas. So when we are speaking about Krishna Lila now, or when we speak about Ramayana, so this has happened in the past. So we speak of it as a historical narration, but a similar pastime is going to happen in the next day of Brahma also. So all the itihasas and Puranas which we have, they're actually actually we can say kind of a prediction for what is going to happen next as well. There might be some variations here and there, but then these Vedas are actually speaking of what has happened in the past and what is going to happen in the future also. So Lord Brahma, when he's guiding people, he actually understands how the system is going to go, how a particular narration or a historical event is supposed to happen. So Lord Brahma is accompanied by the personified Vedas whom he refers to and who support him in his speech. Similarly, we can also see that at the end of Ramayana, when Mother Sita enters the earth, at that time also Lord Brahma appears. Now Lord Brahma was very angry and he wanted to basically destroy the entire universe and reduce that into atoms. So Lord Brahma comes and he tells that no, this is not the case. And this time also he's accompanied by the Vedas and he says that this is your pastime. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are acting like a normal human being, but actually you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Mother Sita is never disassociated with him. She's never separated from you. So although for the pastime's sake she has entered the earth, but then your meeting with Mother Sita will happen in the Vaikuntha planet itself, so you don't have to worry about it. Now, how does Brahma know about it? Because it's already there in the Vedas. So, although the personified Vedas stay with Lord Brahma, but still, he cannot fully understand the personality of Godhead, as Srila Prabhupada writes here. And Lord Brahma is also the topmost Brahmana within the entire universe. So he himself cannot understand. So Brahmana or Brahmanical qualification is actually not the essence or that qualification is not complete. It's not enough to understand the Supreme Lord. Correct? So that this is one piece that we can understand from Upanishad Drisham, because Lord Brahma's vision is completely based on transcendental literature, because he was not even able to create the universe. And when he was born from the navel hole of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu atop a lotus flower, everywhere he could see was only darkness. And he could not understand what he's supposed to do. So when he meditated on the Lord, he did tapasya. And after that, the Vedic knowledge was revealed to him. His activities were manifested. So all his activities are basically driven by the Vedic knowledge. And we can understand one who associates with the personified Vedas, all his activities will be perfect. But still, with that also, he could not understand the unlimited forms of the Vishnu Murtis. Now, Srila Prabhupada, in the first line of this purport, he writes that mere Shastra Gyan or knowledge in the Vedas does not help anyone understand the personality of Godhead. Correct. So, at several places in Shastra and in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna speaks about two things. One is Jnana and one is Vijnana. So, Jnana is theoretical knowledge or acquired knowledge. And Vijnana he defines as realized knowledge, or Vijnana leads to self-realization. Vijnana is realized knowledge, or Vijnana in Srimad Bhagavatam in one of the verses, Prabhupada translates in the word to word as Vijnana is application of Jnana. So Vijnana, the Vishesha Jnana, when you apply this knowledge in your life, then it becomes Vijnana, a self-realized knowledge. So in our, when we are performing devotional service, in our practical day-to-day life, we are reading Srila Prabhupada's books. And we acquire knowledge, right? We acquire jnana. So differentiate between what is jnana and what is vijnana within our own self, it's actually not that difficult. We can easily understand whether our knowledge is on the theoretical level or whether we have attained realization or not. So jnana is when theoretical knowledge is limited to our mind and intelligence. So through our intellect, we understand that knowledge. It creates impression in the mind. We try to speculate. We try to see how things work. And via proper logic, we try to understand what this knowledge or what Krishna is speaking about in Bhagavad Gita or Shukdev Goswami is speaking about Srimad Bhagavatam. We try to understand different concepts of the spiritual realm. So that is limited to Jnana. Vijnana is when the consciousness is transformed. With that theoretical knowledge and practical application on that knowledge, when the consciousness is transformed and one attains Krishna consciousness, one's consciousness is fixed up in the Supreme Lord and His service, then it becomes Vijnana. So realization is when the consciousness is impacted, it is transformed into spiritual consciousness. Whereas Jnana is only limited to theoretical knowledge. So when we are naturally attracted towards service, when without any compulsion, we are always able to think about Krishna, always able to think about His service, always able to think about the service to His devotees. That means that we have got some realization. Other than that, if we are trying to push ourselves, saying, okay, this is how it is supposed to be done, this is what is said in the Shastra, this is what I'm supposed to do, we are practicing. But then the knowledge is actually on the level of theoretical knowledge only. It's not realization yet. Only when the consciousness is transformed, then it's called as Vijnana. So here in this verse also, Srila Prabhupada writes that the great glory was not even touched by the Jnanis engaged in studying the Upanishads. So those Jnanis, which basically means the impersonalists or Mayavadis, now their knowledge is theoretical. Because according to them, because everything else is Maya, they do not have any venture or they do not have any exposure to do any practical service. They're only meditating, they're only contemplating on the knowledge that they have acquired. But because there is no practical application of that knowledge, therefore their realization is mere theoretical. So that's why it is said that Mayavadis don't reach the spiritual realm. Okay, impersonalists may be able to reach, but how many impersonalists do we hear of? We hear of the Kumaras, we hear of the Shukdev Goswami, and to some extent we knew that Bilwa Mangal Thakur had some impersonalistic tendencies before, but then all of them became devotees later. And that is how they were able to attain the spiritual realm, because there was practical application. Without practical application, only the knowledge of the Upanishads is actually not sufficient to enter into the spiritual realm. Correct? But now there is a catch also. Now Upanishads, they do speak that knowledge can lead one to liberation. There are several verses actually all over the Upanishads, and in Vedanta Sutra also it is discussed in quite some detail that knowledge. So in Vedanta Sutra it comes like this. How do we understand which type of knowledge will lead to liberation? Will material knowledge lead to liberation or will spiritual knowledge lead to liberation? And then the discussion comes saying spiritual knowledge will lead to liberation. And there are several verses from Upanishads which are quoted. So from Taittiriya Upanishad, which is quoted, Brahmavid apnoti param. So one who is Brahmavid, one who knows Brahman, he then attains the supreme destination. Apnoti param. It is said in the Upanishad. But who that Brahman is and all actually does not come in the context of this Taittiriya Upanishad at all. Just mention that one who knows Brahman, he can attain the supreme destination. Similarly, in Shvetashvatara Upanishad also, it is said, Tam eva vididvati mrityumeti. By understanding him or understanding that person, Tam eva vididvati. Vididvati means one who knows him, one who understands him, he can transcend death. Mrityumeti. Tam eva vidvati mrityumeti. He can transcend death also. So these kind of statements are actually given in the Upanishads. But if you see, especially in Shvetashvatara Upanishad, the practical application of this knowledge of Brahman is also explained in quite some detail. So normally the Mayavadis, they do not comment on Shvetashvatara Upanishad because it's very similar to what Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita. Because Shvetashvatara Upanishad speaks about the form of the Lord, about the qualities of the Lord. It also speaks about what actually Brahman is. And then there are verses also in Shvetashvatara Upanishad which say that one who has theoretically understood Brahman, then he is supposed to apply. He is supposed to perform devotional service also. He is supposed to act on the basis of the knowledge that he has acquired. And Krishna, he very clearly explains that in Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 7, the 15th verse is speaking about these 4 types of people who do not surrender unto the Lord. The 16th verse is speaking about Chaturvida Bhajante Mam, Jana Sukritno Arjuna, Artho Jigyasu Artharthi, Jnani Cha Bharatarshava. And the next three verses, he speaks about the Jnani, one who surrenders on to Krishna. Now, whenever Krishna is speaking about these Jnanis, no, in each and every verse, there are three verses, 17, 18, 19, he's speaking about those Jnanis who are engaged in devotional service. So he is not merely saying that one who knows Brahman or one who is interested in only acquiring transcendental knowledge, he himself is perfect. He is saying in the 17th verse, Tesham Jnani Nityayukta Eka Bhaktir Vishishyate. So one who is a Jnani, he is engaged in devotional service. And Priyo hi Jnanyothartam Aham Sacha Mama Priya. And to that person who has transcendental knowledge and who performs devotional service, he is dear to me and I am dear to him. So these are the Jnanis Krishna is talking about. And Gita is like the essence of all Upanishads. No? We say Gita Upanishad, and this is spoken by the Supreme Lord himself. So he is giving a very clear understanding of what transcendental knowledge is. So mere theoretical knowledge on the basis of mind, which is situated on the mind and intellect, is actually not enough for one to transcend the spiritual realm. In the 18th verse, he says, Udaraha Sarva Evaiti. Like all these people, Artha, Artharthi, Jigyasu, Jnani, they all are magnanimous, Udara Sarva Evati. But Jnani Tvatmaiva Me Matam, Asthitaha Sahi Yuktatma. So Asthitaha Sahi Yuktatma means he's situated in devotional service unto me. Yuktatma, Srila Prabhupada translates as one who is situated in devotional service. So again, everybody is good, but then these Jnanis are special, and because they are engaged in devotional service of me, Asthitaha Sahi Yuktatma, Mame Vanuttamam Gatim, and they are fixed up in only attaining my supreme abode, in my destination, right? My supreme destination, by coming back to me. So these are the Jnanis he's talking about. So the perfect understanding of Jnana or a Jnani is one who does not have theoretical knowledge, but one who also engages in devotional service of the Lord. And this he again speaks about in the 19th verse. Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanaman Mam Prapadyate. He says, these Jnanis, they surrender unto me. So their knowledge is not merely theoretical, but they actually have to surrender also. Jnanaman Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabhaha. So these are the Jnanis. And then the next verse, he says, Kamai Sthete Hita Jnana Prapadyanti Anya Devataha Tam Tam Niyama Masthaya Prakritya Niyataha Svaya. So Mayavadis, they propose that you can worship any of the deities. And then, because their basis is knowledge, and now because we are materially conditioned, therefore one can take up this purpose of Panchopasana. You can worship any of these 5 deities or any deities that you choose, any deity that you choose, and then you can advance in your spiritual life like this. But Krishna says that those Jnanis, those Mayavadis who claim themselves to be Jnanis, when they get or when they worship different demigods, they are actually Hritaghyana. They do not have proper knowledge. So Kamai Sthete Hritaghyana Prapadyante Anya Devataha. Anyone who worships somebody who's not Krishna or who worships anybody other than Krishna, his knowledge is completely contaminated. It's Hritaghyana. He does not have knowledge, proper knowledge. So these 3-4 verses itself, it defeats the Mayavadi proposition that just by mere theoretical knowledge one can attain the spiritual realm. It is not possible. So Jnana must be, it should be included. The Bhakti should be included. And at several places in Srila Prabhupada's purport, it is mentioned. We will read some of the references also. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, this Canto 11, Chapter 14, Text 22, Krishna says, Dharma Satya Dayopeto Vidya Va Tapasanvita Madbhaktyapetam Atmanam Nasamyak Prapunatihi. He says, neither religious activities endowed with honesty and mercy, nor knowledge or jnana obtained with great penance can completely purify one's consciousness if they are bereft of loving service to me. So again, this is reiterating the fact which we are discussing, that mere knowledge is actually not enough. And when we are speaking about knowledge, we are speaking about the knowledge of Brahman as acquired from the Upanishads. Okay, so that itself is not enough. Now, one more aspect of this is that Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse from the Mundakopanishad. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo namedasa na bahuna shrutena yam evaisha vrinute tena labhyas tasyaisha atma vibrinute tanum swam. The Supreme Lord is not obtained by expert explanation. Right? Atma pravachanena labhyo. So just by speaking, one cannot attain the Lord. Na medhasa, nor by fast intelligence. Na bahuna shrutena, or even by much hearing. So just by hearing the message of the Upanishads, then that itself is not enough for actually attaining the Supreme Lord. He is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. Correct? Now, in devotional service, we say, what do we say? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. This is what it is, We are doing Shravanam, Bahuna Shrutena, raised to Shravanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Medasa, with vast intelligence, we are trying to and remember the Lord. Then Pravachanena, Kirtanam, these things are there. Correct? So, although one may perform devotional service mechanically, still without the favor of the Lord, it is actually not possible to attain His mercy. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's a very famous verse, that Bahu Janmakari Yadi Shravan Kirtan, Tabu Tanapai Krishna Pade Premadhan. One might chant the holy name of the Lord. One might speak about the holy names of the Lord, about the messages from the Shastra also. Bahujanma Kariyadi Shravan Kirtan, Tabu Tanapai. But still, he cannot attain transcendental loving devotional service unto the Lord. And this verse basically comes in the context where it is spoken about the offenses to the holy names of the Lord. So, although one may perform these practices of devotional service mechanically, but unless and until there is a favorable attitude included within that, it is not possible to attain the spiritual realm or the favor of the Lord. So again, in Nectar of Instruction it said, the one's progress in devotional service is dependent on the attitude of the follower. So that attitude is very important. One may mechanically follow the processes of devotional service, but unless his attitude is proper, unless his inclination is to render devotional service unto the Lord, unless inclination to love Krishna, then it is not possible to make very good advancement in devotional service. And here, if we see with respect to Lord Brahma, he is a devotee of the Lord. He was temporarily bewildered, but he is a devotee of the Lord, and by the mercy of the Lord, he revealed his Vishnumurti forms to Brahma. So now, if we try to match this with the level of advancement of pure devotees, we can say that Lord Brahma is situated in Vishuddha Sattva now. Correct? Because he is in Shuddha Sattva, he is able to understand the glories of the Lord. He is also able to see the form of the Lord. And he is able to understand that these forms of the Lord are Satyam, Jnanam, Ananta and Ananda. Correct? Just by looking at a material form, we cannot understand, or one who does not have this, one who is not situated in Vishuddha Sattva, he cannot understand whether a form is eternal or not, whether a form is full of knowledge or not, whether it's unlimited or not, whether it's full of bliss or not. This is possible only when a person or a living entity is situated in Vishuddha Sattva. So this particular case, Lord Brahma has been bestowed this mercy by Krishna, where he has transcended the three modes of material nature and is situated in Vishuddha Sattva, which means that the bewilderment of Brahma has finally been removed and Krishna is revealing himself to Lord Brahma. So an explanation comes in, rather this is Srila Prabhupada writing in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adilila. This is chapter 4, text 62 purport. He says, the transcendental variegatedness of Vishuddha Sattva is completely free from all mundane qualities. Vishuddha Sattva is therefore the proper atmosphere in which Vishuddha Sattva is therefore the proper atmosphere in which to experience the personality of Godhead and his transcendental pastimes. Which means Lord Brahma is situated in Vishuddha Sattva now. Spiritual variegatedness is eternally independent of all material conditions and is non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, being both absolute. The Lord and his devotees simultaneously perceive the Hladini potency directly by the power of the Samvit potency. And then in next section he continues, above all these mundane qualitative manifestations is Vishuddha Sattva. When it is predominated by the Sandhini potency, it is perceivable as the existence of all that be. Right? So the existence of all that be is related to Satyam and Anantam. So Lord Brahma, through the potency of Sandhini, under the influence of Vishuddha Sattva, is able to understand that the Lord is eternal and then he is unlimited. When predominated by the Samvit potency, it is perceived as knowledge in transcendence, which means he is able to understand the supreme knowledge, the jnana of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his personality, not only as mere impersonal form of Brahman, but as the personality of the Lord, because Lord Brahma is actually seeing the Vishnumurtis right in front of him. And he could understand that it's eternal, it's Ananta, unlimited. Although unlimited, but still he has a form. And although Brahman is said to be Ananda, right? those who are impersonalist, for them Brahman is ultimate Ananda. But here they are the Vishnu Murtis and they are the personification of Ananda. So how is Lord Brahma able to realize that? Because he is situated in Vishuddha Sattva and he is under the influence of all these three potencies, Sandhini potency and Samvit potency. And next, Srila Prabhupada writes, and when predominated by the Hladini potency, it is perceived as the most confidential love of Godhead. Vishuddha Sattva, the simultaneous manifestation of these three in one, is the main feature of the kingdom of God. So Lord Brahma is actually, he is under the influence of all these three potencies, which means that Krishna has been so merciful. Lord Brahma, although he tried to kind of cheat Krishna here, that's how the pastime goes, right? He tries to cheat Krishna, he tries to steal him, tries to test him, whether what he does now, whether he'll be bewildered, whether he will cry like a small boy. But then Krishna revealed, no, I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this is how it is going to happen. And when Lord Brahma is completely bewildered, and because Krishna is being merciful to Lord Brahma, he is revealing his transcendental form to him. And that's why Brahma is situated in Vishuddha Sattva in this particular case. Now another point is that this Satya, Jnana, Ananta, Ananda. Okay, so normally we say that, or rather in Brahma Samhita itself it says that Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Correct? Krishna's form is Sat, Chit and Ananda. So this first line of this verse also says Satya, which means eternal, right? That's how Prabhupada translates. Jnana, Ananta, Ananda. So here the Jnana can be compared to the Chit of this Brahma Samhita verse. Right? Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Now there is a very close relation between this Jnana and Chit. Okay, so Chit means one who's conscious. Correct? One who's conscious is called as Chit. That is why in Bhagavad Gita also, I think in the second chapter or in third chapter, Srila Prabhupada writes in the first verse or second verse purport that perfect knowledge means getting knowledge of three things: Chit, Achit and Ishvara. So Chit means that which is spiritual. Achit means that which is material, and Ishvara means the controller of both. So Chit means spiritual, right? In this sense, there is spiritual, material and Ishvara. So Chit means spiritual. And the main defining classification of spiritual is that one who's conscious, one who's aware of what is happening around him, or one who's conscious. So one who's fully conscious, he has full knowledge, because only the person who has consciousness can gain knowledge. One who does not have consciousness, there's no question of gaining knowledge or acquiring knowledge or understanding knowledge or realizing knowledge. That is possible only when one has or one is Chit or one is conscious. So that is why this in scriptures also we will see, and in the work of the Acharyas, I mean in Vedanta Sutra also, in Upanishads also, at multiple places, Chit and Jnana are being used simultaneously, like synonymously. So wherever there is Jnana, it means that Chit is being involved here. And from Krishna's point of view, now Krishna, it's Srila Prabhupada writes in one of his purports that Krishna has three energies: Chit Shakti, Maya Shakti and Jiva Shakti, or internal potency, internal potency, external potency and marginal potency. And this Chit Shakti, and in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's actually mentioned, it's in Madhya Lila, if you want to go to the reference, Madhya Lila chapter 6, text 160, it is said that these three energies, Chit Shakti, Maya Shakti and Jiva Shakti, are three Shaktis of the Lord, but in totality they are actually called as Chit Shakti only. So this Chit Shakti, or the spiritual energy of the Lord, manifests in three different forms, which is again classified as Chit Shakti, Maya Shakti and Jiva Shakti. And this Tatastha Shakti is also a manifestation of the Chit Shakti only, because Tatastha Shakti or the living entities are actually conscious. But then why are they not part of the internal potency? Because they have the tendency to fall into the external potency of the Lord. Correct? So they can come under the influence of the Maya Shakti, although constitutionally they are an expansion of the Chit Shakti. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in one of his writings, he says there is Brihat Chit Vastu and Lagu Chit Vastu. He said the Supreme Lord Krishna is Brihat Chit Vastu. He is full of knowledge. He is fully conscious. And the living entity is Anu Chit Vastu or Lagu Chit Vastu, who is conscious to certain level. So the living entities can never attain the knowledge of Krishna in his complete form. So Krishna is full of knowledge, and Srila Prabhupada also writes that Krishna is conscious of himself as well as the entire creation. He is conscious of all the living entities, he is conscious of all the creation. Whereas the living entity is conscious only limited to his own self, to his own body. So consciousness is there. So living entity is also a expansion of the Chit Shakti of the Lord, in the sense that they are also conscious. So the living entity has a prerogative to acquire knowledge. So knowledge can be acquired, or jnana can be acquired only when one is conscious. So that is why in Shastra, this synonymously these two are used. Jnana and Chit, they are used together. It's a side point. And okay, so Srila Prabhupada writes here in the purport that he writes that although Krishna cannot be seen through the Upanishads, in some places it is said that Krishna can in fact be known in this way. Upanishadam Purusham. He is known by the Upanishads. This means that when one is purified by Vedic knowledge, one is then allowed to enter into devotional understanding. Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. So when we speak about the Upanishads, it's not that the Upanishads are actually not speaking about the form of the Lord. There are several references, but we don't have time to discuss all that. But I have a list of references here where Upanishads are actually speaking about the form of the Lord. And they give very clear description as if it is coming from Puranas. So just like we have the description of the Lord's form in Ramayana, the Lord's form is described right at the start of Ramayana itself. Similarly, Upanishads also describe the form of Lord Rama. And just like Krishna's form is described in various Puranas and Itihasas, similarly Krishna's form is described in the Upanishads also. Correct? So, in Gopal Tapani Upanishad, it is mentioned, this, I'll not read the verses for the sake of time. One should meditate on Lord Govinda, the Supreme Lord, who has beautiful lotus eyes and 2 hands. His complexion is like that of a cloud, and his dress is effulgent like lightning. He wears a garland of forest flowers and is in a posture of meditative silence. This actually comes, it's an Upanishad. Then, again in the same Upanishad, it's mentioned that this cowherd boy is himself the Supreme Soul, beyond material nature. Then, I satisfy Lord Govinda, whose form is eternity, knowledge, and bliss personified. And in Ramottara Tapani Upanishad, it is mentioned, Lord Rama, whose unique form is spiritual bliss personified, is the half syllable in the Pranava. And in Rama Tapani Upanishad, it is mentioned that Lord Rama is accompanied by Sita. His bodily hue is deep blue, and he wears yellow garments, earrings, and a garland of jewels. He has 2 hands, is grave, and holds a bow. So these are several references. So Upanishads are speaking about the form of the Lord, but because the focus of the Upanishads is primarily detachment from material realm and not exactly glorifying the spiritual form of the Lord, those who do a superficial study or have a superficial understanding of the Upanishads, they actually, although they read these verses, but they cannot understand it. They kind of skip it. It's very difficult to understand how they skip it. It should actually lead to some confusion, but somehow they skip it. Correct? So that is why, so that's the reason for this is because they are not engaged in devotional service. They are not favored by the Lord. So although these Upanishads do contain these verses which actually speak about the form of the Lord, but still they cannot understand because they are not engaged favorably towards the Lord. Right? So now concluding, actually Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in his commentary to Brahma Samhita, text 33, he gives a very nice conclusion. So he writes that the Vedic literatures, now if we have to understand, just before I read this, the context is that if the Lord has to be understood by the Vedic literatures, then, but the Vedic literatures are mere words of matter. When we speak the Vedic mantras, we are speaking from our mouth, which is made up of material elements. When we are hearing it from our ears. So how is it possible for something which is material, which is spoken by material mouth, which is heard by material ears, to reveal the transcendental form of the Lord. So there, in his commentary, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati, he writes that the words of the Vedas are actually infused by the chit potency of the Lord, by the spiritual potency of the Lord. So the Vedic mantras are there. There are these words, the mantras are there, their intonations are there, everything is there. And they can be recited by people also. But unless and until these Vedic mantras are invested with the chit potency, the person who's reciting it and the person who's hearing it will not be able to understand the glories of the Lord. It is not possible. So when the Mayavadis recite or the impersonalists recite, although they're reciting these mantras, because they are not favorable to the Lord, these mantras are mere material mantras for them. They are not infused by the chit potency of the Lord. So just like this verse says that just a person can understand the transcendental forms of the Lord, or as it is mentioned here, that asprishta bhuri mahatmya, right? This bhuri mahatmya, the glories, the great glories of the Lord cannot be touched by those who study the Upanishads. So although the Upanishads are transcendental sound manifested from the Lord himself, unless and until the one who's chanting, the person who's chanting these Upanishadic mantras, who's doing the adhyan, who's doing the study, unless is favorable to the Lord, these mantras are actually not infused by the chit potency of the Lord. So Lord withdraws himself from these mantras. So although they might recite Upanishads, full adhyan they will do throughout their entire life, they will not gain any spiritual knowledge or any transcendental knowledge, or they will not make any spiritual advancement, because these mantras are not actually infused by the spiritual potency, by the chit potency of the Lord, and the Lord is not favorable to them. So only when there is an attitude of doing devotional service to the Lord, there is a proper inclination to be favorable to the Lord, to acquire, to attain Lord, to do service to Him, to love Him, then only Krishna infuses these literatures with proper, or not proper, but infuse them with chit potency. And that is when one is able to realize, or one is able to understand the glories of the Lord. So that's why I'll just read this commentary and then we'll come back to this verse, maybe another 5 minutes. So Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati writes, how can the jiva realize such unprecedented existence? The limited intellectual function of the jiva is always contaminated by the influence of time and space, and is therefore not in a position to shake off this limitedness. If the potency of cognitive function does not extend to the realization of the transcendental, what else can? In reply, Brahma says that the transcendental absolute is beyond the reach of the Vedas. Vedesha Durlabham. Correct? It's beyond the reach of the Vedas. The Vedas originate in sound, and sound originates in mundane ether. So the Vedas cannot present before us a direct view of the transcendental world, Goloka. It is only when the Vedas are imbued with the chit potency that they are enabled to deal with the transcendental. But Goloka reveals itself to every jiva soul when he is under the influence of the spiritual cognitive potency joined to the essence of ecstatic energy. So when the Samvit potency is in association with the Hladini Shakti, so this again it comes in one of the purports of Chaitanya Charitamrita, when this is there, then only the message of the scriptures are revealed to that person. So one should be favorable to the Lord. There should be an inclination for cultivating love of Krishna. The ecstatic function of devotion is boundless and is surcharged with unalloyed transcendental knowledge. That knowledge reveals Goloka Tattva, the principle of the highest transcendental, in unison with devotion, without asserting itself separately, but as a subsidiary to unalloyed devotion. So this unalloyed transcendental knowledge, it does arise in such a person, one who studies Shastra infused with chit potency, but it happens only as a subsidiary to unalloyed devotion. So Jnana is not greater than Bhakti. Bhakti is always greater than Jnana. And those who speak that Bhakti is subservient to Jnana, they actually do not have Jnana at all. Because they never gain Jnana because of their non-favorable disposition towards Krishna. Because the scriptures do not reveal the proper transcendental knowledge to these people at all. Right? So, that's why at the end, Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport that we should discuss Srimad Bhagavatam daily as much as possible. And if we may add, along with the purports of Srila Prabhupada. That is how it is to be understood. And then everything will be clarified. For Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedic literature. Nigama Kalpataror Galitam Phalam. It was written by Vyasdev Mahamuni Krite when he was self-realized. Thus, the more we read Srimad Bhagavatam, the more its knowledge becomes clear. Each and every verse is transcendental. Because the reading or studying of Srimad Bhagavatam itself is an act of devotion, and Bhagavatam contains the spiritual topics, the transcendental topics, philosophy is there, Krishna's pastimes are there, pastimes of all Lord, the incarnations are there. And studying of Srimad Bhagavatam itself is an act of devotional service, therefore perfect knowledge is attained. And one makes advancement in devotional service also. So that way Srimad Bhagavatam is the best literature. Whereas when we speak about the Upanishads and other Shruti mantras, okay, they are speaking about transcendence, but studying them in isolation to devotional service is not an act of devotion. It's an act of philosophical speculation. One may attain knowledge about the Lord theoretically, but Vijnana will not happen, realization will not happen, because that favorable attitude, devotional service is not being included in this process. Whereas when one studies Srimad Bhagavatam, itself is an act of devotion, and that infuses one with knowledge. There are several other points also, but we can maybe read it later. We'll stop here. If you have any questions, you can take. Yes, bro. I thought it. No problem. Oh, I thought 8:40. So, sorry, I didn't. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Srila